Welcome to the show. I'm John F. Gately. Thanks for joining us from beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts. And I wanted to join you today and talk about the war because the president has been on a public relations campaign unlike any other. I did not see this coming on the 1-year anniversary of the war. Let's cut right to him right now. He is speaking in Poland, and he's frozen right when we need him to be frozen. Good. Well, he's frozen right now. We'll wait to him to be unfrozen. But wow, did you see the Fox and Friends this morning? Because it was all about the war. I mean, that's all it was. I really wish we could hit pause here. Let's just try to bring this back up. You know, when you're live streaming and there's no one here, I mean, I'm putting on this show by myself. You think that there'd be a little bit of all right, hold on. You know, I think I'd have a little bit of luck being able to put this on, but it's frozen. It's just giving me the circle. So Biden's giving this speech in Poland right now. As you know, he went to visit his buddy Zelensky yesterday. And meanwhile, Putin, here we got the president back now. Meanwhile, Putin is saying he's going to withdraw from the only treaty that we have with the Soviet Union with Russia. He's bailing out of that. Let's go back to the president.
The plan of building peace and security, treating everyone with dignity and respect. That's our responsibility. The democracies of the world have to deliver it for our people. As we gather tonight, the world, in my view, is at an inflection point. The decisions we make over the next 5 years or so are going to determine and shape our lives for decades to come. That's true for Americans. It's true for the people of the world. And while decisions are ours to make now, the principles and the stakes are eternal. The choice between chaos and stability, between building and destroying, between hope and fear, between democracy that lifts up the human spirit and the brutal hand of the dictator who crushes it.
Between a polluted well.
Between nothing less than limitation and possibilities.
Between
the kind of possibilities that come when people who live not in captivity but in freedom.
Freedom. That you can breathe the air.
Freedom. There is no sweeter word than freedom. There is no nobler goal than freedom. There's no higher aspiration than freedom. Americans know that, and you know it. And all that we do now must be done so our children and grandchildren will know it as well. Freedom. The enemy of the tyrant and the hope of the brave and the truth of the ages. Freedom. Stand with us.
Peace.
We will stand with you. Let us move forward with faith and conviction and with an abiding commitment to be allies, not of darkness but of light. Not of oppression, but of liberation. Not of captivity, but yes, of freedom. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. And may God bless the heroes of Ukraine and all those who defend freedom around the world. Thank you, Poland. Thank you for what you're doing. God bless you all.
Well, that was President Biden in Poland after his meeting with President Duda. We heard from the President of the United States. Autocrats only understand one word, no, which bears the question why Putin was given a pipeline called Nord Stream 2. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kaylee McEnany here with my co-host Emily Compagno and Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Princeton University political scientist Lauren Wright and the host of Making Money on Fox Business, Charles Payne. Harris, I want to start there. Autocrats only understand one word, no. The Ukrainians called the Nord Stream 2 pipeline a weapon. His own press secretary, Jen Psaki, called it a geopolitical win for Russia. So if they only understand no, why was a pipeline given to the perpetrator of the Ukraine war, Russia?
Now.
Well, we know why, because there's really no foreign policy to speak of with how they're dealing with this. At least they haven't articulated it. And it's high time a year into the war with all of the billions of American taxpayer dollars that we be told what the end game is. What does no look like? And by the way, now we have a dual problem. China's willing to help Russia out. willing to put military assets on the ground, weaponry on the ground. And so that conceivably becomes another place that we've not told no to. We didn't tell them no. We waited until the spy craft from China reached the shores of South Carolina, and then we shot it down. We didn't tell them no when it was on its way here, and we knew it was packing some kind of a payload. We knew that our transmissions were not able to jam some of their transmissions from what scientists were telling us at the time. We didn't tell them no. And by the way, Putin's military, the Chinese military, they're no longer talking to the Pentagon. And why don't we say no? That's not how it's going to work. We are the power in the free world. It's us.
Right?
Biden just said he had to bring together more than 50 countries in coalition. Why is it always just us?
Right.
Like, I know the role that we play, but we can't use the word no. One of the first things a 2-year-old learns.
Yeah, to your point, we
Well, the
didn't
first
tell
thing I
China
learned
no
is
on the
mine.
spy balloon till it had traversed the entirety of
Mine.
the continental U.S. Charles also apparently we're not telling
Love those
China
sneakers,
no when it
Charles.
comes to some points we could be using to be competitive rather than congenial with
always
China.
got the
Josh
best
Rogan
suits,
makes
but he
this
does
point
wear
in the
sneakers.
Washington Post.
Spy.
He says this, that the Biden administration's in courtship mode and that a GOP Senate aide said even after the airship incident, the administration continues to sit on a list of competitive actions against China. You compare that with the Trump administration, 22 actions by the
Josh
Justice
Rogan, not
Department,
Joe
including indictments, 60 actions by the State Department, 27 by the White House, 23 by the Defense Department. So it doesn't sound like we're doing a whole lot of no with our other
Basically,
I
adversaries.
got to tell you, it has been
This,
so
we're
embarrassing
basically
to watch
borrowing money
President
from China.
Biden virtually beg, just beg President Xi openly. That press conference last week, after the balloon thing, and he's, we're not apologizing. No, you are apologizing. Me thinketh thou protest too much,
Yes.
and everyone could see right.
All right, so just not if you're up to date on this, what we're doing with this war is we're borrowing money from China because we don't really have enough of our own to buy bullets and tanks and you name it. We're giving it to the Ukrainians who are theoretically fighting a war in Ukraine, so we don't have to fight a war in Poland, right? Poland is the country that typically the Russians have just like run over until they get to East Germany, basically. That's what's happened twice. So we're basically fighting a war in Ukraine by proxy, but we're borrowing that money from China in part or in whole to supply Ukraine, so we don't have to fight a war in Poland. And this is forcing China and Russia into a, how should we say this, a more of an alliance than ever before. So you might remember when Nixon went to China back, well, I mean, you might not remember because you probably won't, not even I remember. I'm that old. But the whole idea was to split China from Russia. And it was an amazing thing. Only somebody that hated communists so much like Nixon did could have made that trip to China. And Nixon was strategically accurate in that. He basically split China from Russia at that point and kind of brought China into the U.S. economic realm. Slowly, it was a long-term thing. And effectively, now what we're doing is exactly the opposite, and very, very quickly. Somebody just told me the other day that in the Russian stock market, like last year, we'll just say, for example, like these numbers won't be accurate, but like they had like 1% invested in the Russian stock market. Now they have 20%. All right, let's see what Emily Kemp.
And then, frankly, a global humiliation, which is what is occurring right now. I note as well, President Biden said the defense of freedom is not a day's work. It takes many. He's absolutely right. We've seen that defense of freedom day by day be totally eroded under his lack of leadership. And pushing further a little bit on the Josh Rogan article that you touched on there, he makes the point, it's so obvious as China maintained on that Munich stage that the world was watching, that we chased them around. We demanded an apology. They gave no apology. In fact, they said publicly that we were absurd and hysterical in shooting down the balloon. The German conference there, the security conference, they said, will you acknowledge Taiwan? Will you acknowledge and commit to not further escalation? They said, nope, we won't, because that's our country and it's never going to be their own.
Right there.
At every outlet that China was given to extend some type of reassurance to the globe that they are not the superpower, the narcissistic superpower that they are, itching and clawing one step at a time to get more power, They didn't. And the bottom line is this administration continues to show that we don't have that strength of leadership your prior boss did, that prior Secretary of State Pompeo did. Blinken has done nothing to reassure me as a working American that my safety is in their hands. If anything, it's absolutely to the contrary.
That's right. And that Rogan piece you mentioned, there were just some interesting lines in there.
All right. So what is obviously more important is the Ukrainian border rather than U.S. border. We are financing this crazy war, which is pushing Russia and China together, and we're forgetting about the little invasion that is on our southern border and apparently now on our northern border. I actually even thought, the other day that I should head up to the northern border to do like a live shot because I could drive there. Be a little bit of a ride, but you could drive there from Massachusetts. And we don't have how should we say this, tanks on our border, but we probably should, because we're suffering an invasion. It's an invasion without armed force, although there's the cartel, right, who are killing people certainly in Mexico and in the United States, and through what they smuggle in through our ports of entry and through elsewhere, and that's drugs, right? What do we have over last year? In the last year that was recorded, over 100,000 overdoses. That's more people than died as Americans in Vietnam, right? In Vietnam, 57. I'm going to get the number wrong, but 57,000 or so. I'm thinking, and that's way more than died in all of Vietnam. And we had that just in the last recorded year, die of an overdose. That's well more than fit in, from my perspective, in Gillette Stadium, which fits at 62,000 or something like that. It's 3 times of what fits in Fenway Park, approximately, from a Bostonian perspective, of course. All right. So the war, public relations is ramping up like you've never seen before. The U.S. is trying to get the Biden administration is trying to get to the point where we can send warplanes, right? That's the next step. And after warplanes, then we're talking about troops on the ground, like real troops, not the advisors that we probably already have there that we don't know about, but troops on the ground. In order to get troops on the ground, there's going to have to be some probably provocation. That's usually what it takes, right? To get Americans to send their young men and women overseas to die. And that provocation will either be real, like it was for Pearl Harbor, for instance, or for 9/11, or it will be fake, like it was in the Gulf of Tonkin incident or subsequent resolution. Or was it as it was if I might check my history here, but when we went to go fight Cuba, right? When the first Roosevelt, went to go to Cuba. But that's what we're moving into, and it's becoming an extremely dangerous environment. I've never seen us be so reckless with war and peace. As many people think that we're actually already moving towards World War III. And if you look at the history of World War I and the history of World War II, you can see there's very rare that a war will just break out. It's usually precipitated by numerous incremental steps. And there's a lot of people making a really strong argument right now that we are now doing those incremental steps. It's extremely dangerous because we're dealing with what could potentially be a nuclear war. I have just dumbfounded by how many of our leaders are just toying this like they're playing a game of checkers with their grandchild. What they really do is they're risking their grandchild and their great-grandchild's lives. Well, Jack, you're being so weak, and if we let them take over the Ukraine, they'll roll over Poland, and before that, they'll be in London. you got to understand where you can win and where you can lose. And do you really think we can win in Ukraine? I mean, it's literally on Russia's doorstep. I mean, it just doesn't seem long-term viable when we have our own invasion on our doorstep. All right. The warmongering will go on at Fox News. Wait till Brian Kilmeade gets a hold of this. He is so pro-war. I swear to God, he'd put his boots on right now and head over to Ukraine if it drop him in on a parachute. He is so fired up. Kilmeade is, and almost all of them. Very few of them at Fox. Tucker is an exception. Thank you, Tucker. But a lot of other Fox personalities are all pro-war. They're all neocons. They're all in with Biden. They're all in with Biden at Fox. It's a cheerleader situation. And that provocation that I mentioned hasn't even come yet. This is just the pregame. And they're all fired up. The war is probably really good for their ratings. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm John F. Gately from beautiful Plymouth, America's hometown in Massachusetts. Behind ideological lines. Have a great day. Bye-bye.